All right, welcome to Deal Makers. Today we are joined by the one and only Greg Abbott of Velocity Retail, and we've got a fun agenda in store. We're going to be talking about Phoenix. We're going to be talking about retail. We're going to be talking about fixer-upper retail and how to add value to building, some of the challenges that Greg's helped solve over the years. And he's just a tremendous wealth of knowledge and experience. So, Greg, I'm excited to learn from you, excited to tap into all that you've known. You've got kind of a really unique and special background. So first and foremost, how you doing and where are you joining from?
Well, Sean, good morning. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. This is a first for me, so bear with me you're good at this stuff. You're a natural, but bear with
No,
me
hey,
as I stumble through
what's
this.
funny is you've become the Clubhouse pro over the last few weeks, and so you're getting good at this all sorts of ways.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, Clubhouse, that's been remarkable. It's a whole other story, but you get on there and you just start talking to people and sharing ideas. It's remarkable how it grows and develops. It's been awesome. It's been fascinating.
No kidding. So we've got a couple of fun questions that you and I talked about ahead of time, but we're broadcasting live here today. So if you guys are joining us live, definitely say hello to me, say hello to Greg, drop a comment in here or smash that like button or give us the clap as they do on LinkedIn. I want to encourage anyone listening live or even watching the replay after the fact to go ahead and drop questions in the box, because I can bring those up live. Greg can answer some of those live, or either of us could go back after the broadcast and potentially tackle some of the questions or the interesting ideas that he gets run into our head. But why don't we do this, Greg? For anyone who doesn't know you already, would you take maybe a minute or so to kind of give us your background? Because I know you've been doing this for a while, got a ton of experience, kind of see if you can fast forward through a couple decades in about 60 seconds or so.
You bet. Yeah. Happy to do it. Thank you. So, well, let's go back even further. Family was in the real estate business. They would invest on the side, so I would show up and help them do their maintenance on their multifamily properties and talk to the property managers and tenants with them. So I kind of learned it from a young age. And then after graduating from Arizona State here in Tempe, Arizona, actually went to LA, joined Grubb & Ellis in their training program as a runner. And so got some experience grinding in West LA, doing cold calls for brokers, and so got started that way. And then missed Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix is awesome. I love it, both the climate and the people and the opportunity and the outdoor activities here. So wanted to come back to Phoenix, decided to stay with Grubb & Ellis in retail leasing. So did retail leasing for probably 20 years with a couple of different companies. Really got to know the business really, really well. Love restaurants and love being a customer of restaurants and some other retail. And so it's been fun working on it. And then being kind of an analytical guy, enjoying the numbers or in the data, sort of gradually and naturally made the shift over to investment sales, and now doing predominantly investment sales. But it works out really well because what I found is we can leverage, my team and I can leverage my leasing background and market knowledge and tenant knowledge and relationships to help really maximize value for the shopping center owners we represent.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's go and dissect your background a little bit more, because I know you spent a lot of years at CBRE, right? And more recently you're at Velocity. And just for my own education, like I'd love to hear a little bit of the differences, between those shops and maybe your transition from leasing into more investment sales. What made that interesting for you? And not that there's necessarily a best shop, but you probably specialize in something specifically at Velocity. I think CBRE kind of does anything and everything. I'd be really interested to hear about that personally.
Sure. Well, first of all, the differences perhaps between big and small. No doubt there's differences, but at the end of the day, it's your business and it's what you put into it. It's your work and effort. And so whether you're at a big place, big shop like CB or Cushman, or a smaller place like Velocity, it's about yourself and your team. And now, a place like CB, you have the national relationships, national contacts. There's some advantage to that. There's pluses and minuses. I mean, with the big, you take the good and the bad. Same thing with the small. But both are great. I mean, being at CB for years was fantastic. Got to meet a lot of people nationally, and just an outstanding company that they've put together there. And then now at Velocity, it's great with the people that are there, and Brian Gass, Darren Pitts, Dave Cheatham, just that lineup of big hitters. Just having that market knowledge right there, close every day, it's just it's second to none. It's really fantastic. And then to your question of the transition from leasing over to investment sales, it's kind of like what I hinted at before, where it's just leveraging that market knowledge. I mean, I think a lot of people can sell a shopping center, and people can do it whether they're in Phoenix or even single tenant net lease deals in particular. You can do it if you're in Florida, selling Phoenix properties. I think the big difference for me, the differential, is really understanding the asset and knowing the pluses and minuses of it, knowing the answers to the questions from buyers before they're asked, anticipating what the questions are going to be, and really being able to help portray all the strong points and features of the property to maximize the value.
So what would you say is your niche or your focus or your specialty now, or even Velocities in general, more broadly?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Velocity Retail Group focuses exclusively on retail and shopping centers properties. I'd say in Arizona, but really across the region, the Southwest and across the South. But shopping centers only, and retail properties, and so it's nice to be laser focused. So everyone there knows retail, breathes retail, is talking to retail tenants and shopping center and retail property owners every day. And it's all we do. And again, having that team there that we have, and the volume of leasing and sales that they're doing, it's really, really helpful just to have that mass. And now that COVID's been a nuisance. We've had, like everyone else, we've had to Zoom and figure out how to stay together. But just that connectivity that I love there, it makes you appreciate it when we had COVID, because it's like, oh man, I got a question about, Lowe's or Kohl's or Target or whatever, and volumes. And I got to talk to, Brian or Dave or Darren and get to see what kind of volumes they're doing down the street. And with COVID, it just made that so much harder. So it really made me appreciate the value and the benefit of in-person office.
Yeah. So is it just me? I feel like when I see, the leases getting signed and all the listings out there, that you guys get a lot of the big box deals done, and you get a lot of the big box listings. Is that a misconception, or would you say that that's maybe even a further niche or specialty of all the brokerages who focus on retail in the Southwest?
Well, no doubt. Velocity Retail Group and the team there does a lot of big box work for sure. And I mean, there's a handful of people in town that do a lot of volume, and I'm not going to say, oh, hey, we're the best or what have you. We'll leave that to other people can judge, I guess. But they do a lot of volume, a huge amount of volume. They, not only represent a lot of the box users, but have a lot of big box leasing as well.
So I feel like that has, if you read like the press headlines, kind of a bad rap, right? You think about big boxes and you can see the Sears or the JCPenney or the headlines of like all these retailers going under, or the gyms that struggled through COVID. And so what are some of the uses that you're seeing now for those big boxes? Or even if you just look back at some of the deals that you guys have recently done, this is deal makers, right? So if you want to talk about closed transactions, or a couple of deals that pop to your mind where you guys have been successful at backfilling some of these, like what I would consider big scary retail boxes, because it feels like there's maybe fewer users. And I know, a lot of my investors would look at me and go, Sean, that is kind of an intimidating deal, because there's a 20 or 30,000 or 40,000 square foot box that's deep. And, is that still a use that makes sense for today? The whole retail landscape has changed. So, you're in the trenches every day, but I would think the masses or even the generalists in commercial real estate may not have a sense of that as well as you guys do.
You bet. Yeah, that's the big question of the day. I probably get that question every single day. either an owner calling saying, hey, what should we do with this box? Or what are we going to do if the tenant vacates? Or every day we get that question. And frankly, I love it, Sean. I mean, it's sort of one of the big reasons, I guess, why I'm here. And
Yeah.
it's really intriguing. So many things to share, and this could take the whole hour if we wanted to. But man, like, where do you start on retail boxes? First of all, I think the bottom line to me is it's opportunity. And I think but I'm not being overly optimistic, I don't think, because when you think about retail space, you've probably heard me talk about this on Clubhouse before. I feel like I repeat it every day. But when you think about retail space and retail property, it's some of the best property out there, right? Like, it's on section line corners, it's on main streets, there's tons of traffic, there's good demographics. It was built there in the beginning for a reason. And I just think that it's I don't know. I think people are overly concerned about it. No doubt there's stress, but it's great real estate. And whether maybe it's not going to be a big box, soft goods retailer anymore, but it opens up opportunities for others that are doing a better job, more efficient job on delivering customer service and something that the consumer wants. And it's just sort of natural evolution. And if we were industrial space hidden, back, behind retail in the middle of the neighborhood or whatever, off of a main street, who knows what we would do with that? Like, if industrial ever has a problem, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do there. But retail is, main and main, front and center. There's a lot of opportunity. And so, I mean, some of it, and then somebody else, I can't remember who said this, but you've probably heard the quote, right? Like, we're not overbuilt, we're just over repurposed or over demolished. And so I think everyone's sort of following the same theme of that there's good opportunity there because it's good real estate. And so, whether some of this gets converted to multifamily, which, that's another big topic, in the retail world, we're talking about boxes. In the multifamily world and society in general, we're saying, what are we doing about the shortage of housing, particularly affordable, lower income housing? And so some of this retail that maybe we don't need anymore and need as much of because of the internet and Amazon and others, some of it's becoming multifamily. It's meeting the needs of, the affordable housing demand. Some of it's getting repurposed into other types of retail or entertainment. There's lots of exciting things happening for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I share with, my friends or colleagues that are kind of, not working in this space on a day-to-day basis. I think a lot of the stuff that we can get shipped to our door in 24 or 48 hours, we'll probably do that. But it's some of the food and the fun and the physical on-site stuff, the entertainment, the experiential type things that'll still make so much sense for retail for many, many, many years to come. So, we're being a little bit more thoughtful about the tenants that we select to put in those deals. Do you want to share some of the specific, tenants that are expanding right now, or deals that you've seen done recently, just to get all of our creative juices flowing? It's like, who are the guys out signing deals right now? Who's in expansion mode? Who's looking for more space? Is anybody?
Sure. I was looking at a report today. I think it was a CoStar report. I can't remember who it was. But just in general, in a very broad sense, leasing activity, as people probably would expect, is that leasing activity is now is up over the last few months. COVID related market conditions last year really slowed things down quite a bit. So leasing activity is up. A large proportion of those leases are smaller leases still. Tenants are starting to commit, but they're not. We haven't seen a lot of huge leases yet. People are starting to look and starting to make the decision to commit money to expansion. But a majority of the leases have really been smaller leases so far.
Okay.
I can give you one example. A friend of mine he has 5 or 6 restaurants in town. I won't share the name, probably, but we could, I guess. Chris Collins.
Plug him.
Yeah, let's do it. Chris is great. Chris Collins. He owns the Macintosh and the Collins, and has a bunch of restaurants over there on Hayden and Scottsdale. Great guy, and does a good job. And so he's a neighbor. And so I kind of did my restaurant COVID tracking through him. at the beginning of COVID, he was like, yeah, I mean, sort of the dreams of being a huge giant restaurateur are probably done, but that's fine. I can trim it down. And even if I had 2 or 3, I'd have the same amount of profit, same level of profit as I do now with 6. I was like, oh, that's too bad. That's a bummer. Like, this is terrible. But he was okay with it. He was comfortable with it at the onset of COVID. Then about halfway through, he's like, well, things are pretty good. We're doing delivery and takeout and all this stuff. And I might be able to keep them all. But the question will be staying power. Like, if I can outlast, there's going to be restaurants that close. This was mid last year. There's going to be some restaurants that close. But if my neighbor closes first, then I should be okay, because all of those customers that were going to go there come to me. So now to circle back to your question of expansion.
Yeah.
Now he's gone full circle and he's expanding. And so it's gone from this idea of like, oh, I'm going to have to close some to now he's made it through and he's expanding. And so he's doing, little 4,000, 5,000 square foot, a new restaurant in Central Phoenix, North Central Phoenix. And so guys like that, that are finally coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, I wanted to expand pre-COVID. I kind of put it on delay during COVID, and now we're ready to go. Frankly, Sean, I think there's a lot of pent up demand. I mean, are you seeing that as well? Where
I mean, I keep hearing the term roaring 20s, right? Like, we're all itching to take a vacation. We're itching to go out to the movies, to like have a normal, meal together at a restaurant where, everyone's maybe not masked up at some point. I mean, I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of pent up, either dollars, demand, or some combination thereof.
What are they calling it? Some people are calling it revenge spend.
Yeah, revenge spend or roaring 20s are probably the two that I hear most.
Yep, that's great.
I'm noticing, Greg, couple great questions coming in here, and some commentary from Mary, and then Dotine is asking some good questions here too. Again, if you guys have questions or ideas or feedback that you want to share with me or with Greg or with anyone who's tuning in here live or after the fact, please don't hesitate. It's an awesome opportunity to do some power networking. Dotine, do you guys use Retail Lease Track? I have done that in the past, and I absolutely am. We're trying to get a hold of national tenants, and Greg, I'm sure you have already a ton of relationships with those big national tenants. And she brings up another really good point here. A lot of tenants that are migrating across the country, or they're big on the East Coast, opening on the West Coast, and vice versa. And so that's also, I'm sure, creating some expansion opportunities. Here's another good one, Greg, from Ingrid. I come from food. Distributors are expecting a huge second half in 21. That feels right to me without looking at any data. What would you say?
Yeah, I think so too. Frankly, retail and restaurants and retail too. Retail. What was it? Remember the NRF? I'm just seeing if I have my note up here. I have to admit I'm looking at my cheat sheets. Yeah. But what was it? A couple of months ago, the National Retail Federation says we're going to see anywhere from like 6.5% to 8.5% growth this year, and in sales. And so just fantastic growth that they're projecting.
Awesome.
So in restaurants and retail both.
Greg, I know you've worked on a couple challenging deals, you might say. I look at deals all day long where there's vacancy that's been there for a long, long time, and you bring in the right leasing team, and you can take a property from 50% vacant to 100% in just a couple of deals. Do you have any specific ones that are, learning lessons for anyone tuning in live or watching the replay?
Well, we've got a lot. Where do we start? One, frankly, that I was involved in. Sometimes just because of my small family office that we have, sometimes we'll invest along with owners. And so this is actually one that we did. I'll give you a couple. Yeah. But there was a deal up on Bell Road. We bought an empty Bash's grocery store, 43,000 feet, smaller, grocery footprint. And it had been sitting there for a while, and Bash's never sells. But back then I was kind of knew Stormy Basha, and I love Stormy and knew Stormy well. And so somehow I was able to talk Stormy into letting us buy this Bash's box, because I wanted to. She hadn't been able to lease it, and I felt pretty optimistic that I'd be able to get something done. But it was harder for some reason. It's one of those deals. It was just a little bit harder than I thought, harder than I expected. Great intersection, Bell Road, lots of traffic, somewhere near like 80,000 cars a day, and,
wow,
and tons of people. So great location. what we ended up doing is we had to split the darn thing, which is not uncommon for boxes. We're doing a lot of that. We've done a lot of that over the last decade, and probably will do a lot of that moving forward.
Yep.
But so 43,000 feet, we had to split it. Big Lots took half, and
Okay.
that was awesome because it was like at the time it was like a low double-digit rent deal, but that paid for the whole property. I mean, the value created there paid for the whole thing. A lot of people say, "Hey, how much did it cost to split it? Is it worth it?" That particular box, that's a big thing we hear, a big question we get a lot too, are costs, which vary widely, by the way. But that one wasn't too bad. But anyways, we're able to
ballpark number for us.
Oh, that one was like 100. Oh man, I can't remember. I think it was like 150 a foot.
Okay.
So yeah, and so it wasn't on the grand scheme. It wasn't that bad. So we split it. We leased half to Big Lots, and then the other half we ended up selling. A user wanted to buy the other half. We'd rather have leased it, but they paid a number that made sense just to sell it. But when you say a tricky deal, one, it was kind of a pain in the butt to split the box. I mean, we had to add 30 feet of storefront and 30 feet of width of storefront in the front, and do all the normal splitting work, split the HVAC, and Bashas had a big, huge air conditioning unit that for them worked. For us, it was huge and amazing, but just completely not usable for us. So we had to add some HVAC, and then what's the other part to it that I was going to share? Oh, and then to sell the other half, it was one property, and it didn't need a lot of the building. Like to split the building and then sell, we had an issue with building and life safety, the codes with the city. And so we ended up having to do a special arrangement with the city to let us be able to sell it and parcelize it. And so
you did end up splitting it, creating a new parcel. And so you could sell that off, and it's almost like you kind of condominiumized it or did a split in that case.
We did, yeah. We condoed a big box. And
how long did that take?
Oh, well, the whole process, it wasn't actually too bad. The split process was way faster than normal. That I always say, make sure you have a great planning and zoning attorney. So props to the guys at Earl Curley and Lagarde. They did a wonderful job, and so they helped us get it through the city. But yeah, normally, because it was just a normal wall, like a wall that would separate a space that now separates two properties. So as it relates to building and life safety codes and so forth, we didn't meet any of those, but we were able to just have an arrangement with the city that let us do it. So that was a pretty complicated deal. So we're proud about that one.
That's maybe an interesting segue here, because I know you've been engaged by the mayor and working, with city council. Fill us in on kind of what that experience has been, and maybe any lessons learned or opportunities that have come out of that.
Sure. Yeah, that's remarkable. I didn't plan or intend to be involved in political issues or land use issues in the city, but some people out there may remember this. When Bayrock was trying to do their redevelopment of the old. This takes me way back, Sean. This is evidence that I'm an old guy. But there used to be Blockbuster. I think it was called, and maybe someone out there will correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's called Blockbuster Music. That was just east of the Esplanade there at 24th and Camelback. You've got the Esplanade buildings, and then just east of that, there's a big apartment or fairly big apartment building. That used to be like a mixed use deal with Blockbuster Music. And that's when I don't know if you would rent music like you do videotapes, who would do that anymore. But anyways, back in the day, Blockbuster Music was there. And so Bayrock, a big developer, they were actually partnering with Trump. I hesitate dropping too many names because we want to keep it neutral. But Bayrock, was kicking off a big project there. And God bless them, but a few of the neighbors had a lot of input. And to me, it's like, hey, we need to have thoughtful development that's cohesive and appropriate for an area. But also, we got to balance that with the economic importance of core areas. And if we're going to be a city that's going to compete for jobs and deliver jobs to our citizens, it's also important that we have thoughtful development in certain areas. And to me, it's like, wow, if we're not going to have a bigger building at 24th and Camelback, where are we going to do it? And it just struck me as remarkable And again, I mean, I have a lot of respect for the neighbors for sure. And you got to work with the neighbors to get your projects done and make it be a win-win. But on that one, it really felt like it was out of balance. And so I just reached out to my councilman and said, how does this work? Like, how does something like this happen? How are we going to compete as a city with Austin and Charlotte and whoever back in the day, San Francisco, and how are we going to compete with these cities if we're not allowing development, the right development in certain areas? And so after talking to him and meeting a couple of the council people, they said, hey, you should be on this planning commission. It's the village planning commission. And so I got appointed. And so next thing I know, I'm sitting there listening to these cases, and I don't know, but it's cool. It's nice to contribute and contribute to your city. And I think private property is important and the freedom that's associated with private property. And so, trying to make sure we don't infringe too much on private property rights while still having a beautiful community.
I mean, spoken like a future politician right there.
Oh man, no, this is the end of the line, Sean, I think.
Okay.
But it's nice to contribute. It's nice to give back,
Very cool. Let's see. I know you were taking a peek at some of the Metro Phoenix numbers, for folks in town or folks really all over the country, right, that might be interested in investing in Phoenix. Would love to hear even just some of the broad strokes. I don't think you need to get into like the nitty gritty numbers on a report, but when I think back to like what was happening in 19, and then you had 2020, and then what we've seen so far in 21. Can we spot some trends there? Are there some things that you think should be top of mind for anyone thinking about investing in retail in Arizona right now?
Well, big picture first. I mean, I think everyone on the planet probably knows now, but we're one of the hottest housing markets in the entire country, and so that's driving a lot of what's going on, which is just incredible. And driving around Phoenix and looking at the numbers, it's amazing what's going on here. And it's kind of the perfect, I hate to say storm, but it's kind of the perfect equation where you have people that want to come here. It's reasonably affordable cost of living. You can get a nice house, new house for a reasonably good price. Awesome weather. What do they say? You can't shovel snow. And so our weather is fantastic, except for a couple months in the summer. But we can come out and bother you guys in California in the summer. So it's an hour flight on Southwest. So it's a great place to live. People want to come here. And then, so the people are coming to Arizona. The employers, similar story. They want to come because it's a relatively low cost of labor, well-educated labor force, good conditions for, for example, you've seen probably the Taiwan Semiconductor announcement. That's going to be a huge plant. I think that's a $12 billion plant, probably going to $36 billion,
wow.
Kind of triple. And then Intel announced a few weeks ago, they're doing, I think it's $20 billion. Doing two plants down there in Chandler. So just as examples, so the growth is incredible. And so with the growth comes a lot of interest and demand, both from retail tenants and from investors. And so the amount of capital that we're seeing coming to Phoenix is remarkable. So just to get into less general, in the retail perspective, we're seeing a lot of interest in single tenant net lease deals. So far, a lot of that's COVID related. The multifam or the multi-tenant sales, were few and far between last year, just because we didn't know what we had. Now, Sean, you were there though. I mean, props to everyone that's listening that is thinking about selling or brokers. I mean, Sean is closing despite COVID uncertainties of his tenants, and so it's. But you're smart. You're getting great deals, and your investors should be really, really happy with you. Because you're taking advantage of the market, and we're not going to see prices like this in a year or two as rent the reliability or the understanding of what tenants are going to stay and what they're going to pay, as that starts to become clearer, prices aren't going to be as low as they are right now. So you're picking up some nice deals. But so anyways, single tenant stuff has been selling like crazy, very, very low caps. It almost doesn't matter what the cap rate is; they're just picking it up. Low interest rates are driving that, and then now multi-tenant is just starting to we're starting to see some volume reemerge in the market now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but to your point, I think we're being very thoughtful about, when we're buying a new building, what's it going to look like to lease it up, and who's going to backfill a 20 or a 40,000 foot box now, and what types of tenants are going to be making a ton of sense in an age where Amazon's probably just going to continue to grow, right? And so we know some of those things, and you can do the math, think about your own consumer preferences and what's going to make sense. But there's a lot of things that excited me about Phoenix and continue to do so when I think about the fact that it's very employer friendly, that you've got tons of jobs moving there and people, and like you talked about, retail demand there. So that all has that trickle down effect to more retailers wanting to open or expand in those locations. I like the fact that it's landlord friendly, and I tell a lot of my friends or colleagues who want to invest alongside of us in projects, it's like, look, we could buy a shopping center in Orange County, California, and maybe we get a 4 cap on it, and that almost that same deal with the same tenant mix might trade at a 6.5, 7.5, possibly even an 8 cap if you go over to greater Phoenix. And so that's almost doubling the return on investment. And for me, like you said, that's worth jumping on an hour flight, doing a day trip and coming back, a couple times a year to meet with the tenants and the lenders and the vendors and see what's going on there and be boots on the ground. Because I think about doubling my returns, we can, build that nest egg or build that cash flow that much faster, rather than taking 10 years to build that network. We might be doing that in half the time. So it's really helping to compress that time. It also feels like, Arizona is one of the hottest spots in the whole country, like both literally and figuratively, right?
Yep.
You hear about Florida, you hear about Texas, and you absolutely hear about Arizona now. So,
really, hey, Sean, here's something. Do you think, the hour flight idea, and you're out here a lot, and it's almost like you're a Phoenician, honorable Phoenician. It's almost like, to me, to a certain extent, it almost feels like we're the same sort of suburban or urban area, because industrial, you can get out to West Phoenix, where we have a ton of industrial distribution and facilitation development going on right now. And, you can get from Long Beach or the LA Basin to West Phoenix and back within the trucking regulations, the amount of hours that they can drive or what have you. And so that kind of shows that we're kind of almost the same urban area, and a lot of the investment dollars and the people and others, go back and forth so frequently. It's kind of cool to, with having that support just to the west of us and all those dollars that want to invest here. I think it's really cool. And then, like you said, supplement that with all the expansion that's taken place here. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, comparing investment opportunities here to LA, Southern California. I don't know.
I don't know if it's a secret anymore, right? Yeah, I look at the folks who are buying and selling and own, and probably half of the people buying retail shopping centers in Phoenix feels like they're coming out of California in some capacity. Keep me honest on those numbers, but I think a lot of people see that value as well, and probably all over the country.
Yeah, for sure.
Greg, we're running tight here on time, but let's do this. For anyone who doesn't know you and wants to connect with you, what's the best way to reach out if they've got questions about retail or big boxes or Arizona? How should they get a hold of you? What's your favorite way to get in touch? And then any final thoughts you want to share with the world?
Sure. Well, thank you, Sean. So I appreciate you putting me on here. It's a first, and hopefully it went okay. And I appreciate the opportunity. Very cool. I gotta get some lessons from you on how to do these things.
Well, you guys let us know if you're watching this live or you're watching the replay. Let us know what your favorite parts were. Or smash that like button, drop a comment, or if you have a follow-up question for Greg, you didn't get a chance to ask it live, I think you'll be able to do that in the comments, and we can go back and tackle it after the fact. So sorry, cool. Greg, I interrupted you.
No, not at all.
Get a hold of you.
But so to reach me, probably the best way is email. The fastest and most efficient email is greg.abbott. So greg.abbott velocityretail.com. So that's probably the fastest way and the most immediate response. So yeah, I'd love to. Anyone? Oh, there you go. Oh, 2 T's.
Oh, 2 T's. Let me see if I can fix that.
I should add that one though to the mix. Just make it easy for people.
Right. So you catch it at Veloc.
But that's cool. Thanks for doing that.
There we go. All right. So reach out via email if you've got any questions for Greg. Check him out on Clubhouse. Greg, you've got also an amazing presence on LinkedIn. I mean, I think I saw you had over 7,000 connections. So you're a social media monster. Maybe showing some of these young bucks how it's done a little bit.
I don't know. Yeah. So to be honest, I don't know how it happens. You just put stuff on there once in a while. That's maybe, who knows? Maybe what I think's interesting, others do too. I don't even try that hard, but that's cool. I didn't know I had 7,000. So thank you. That's neat.
Terrific, Greg. Well, thanks for jumping on. Any final thoughts that you want to leave our audience with, or things to digest?
No, not really. I mean, I think opportunity. I think we hit it earlier. Just opportunity. A lot of people are concerned about COVID or concerned about the economy or whatever. But I just view it as opportunity. And if we work hard and like you and I are starting to collaborate and just get together and share ideas. There's so much happening in Phoenix and so much growth that I just think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I'm looking forward to a good few years ahead.
Awesome. Hey, couple quick final housekeeping things. We've got another live broadcast coming up on Thursday with the one and only Mary Nolenberger from Orion. So she's going to be our next guest. And then if you guys know somebody, Greg, I'm talking to you too, who would be a great guest for the show. They've got a tremendous amount of knowledge. They're an expert. They're a superstar in commercial real estate. I always love learning from folks like that. And I think folks out there on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook appreciate learning from the experts as well who've been in the trenches for many years. So please don't be a stranger. Reach out and we can get you scheduled for an upcoming episode. Greg, thank you so much. We'll talk to you very soon and look forward to working on a project together soon.
Let's do it. Thanks, Sean.
All right. Take
Have an
care.
awesome day, bud.
Bye-bye.